Patch.
I'm
It's
leaving
okay,
that.
buddy.
I'm leaving this totally into the video. This is the DMZ America podcast for Monday, December 23rd, 2024. And coming to you from the left, where all noble politics reside, I am editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I am coming to you from the right, and I am not so noble cartoonist Scott Stantis.
And so,
Happy Festivus.
Happy Festivus to you as well. December 23rd is the annual celebration of Festivus. And I have to admit, I didn't really watch Seinfeld much when it was on the air. But my son and I have almost completely caught up. We're all the way through season 9. We never got to the Festivus episode, though. But we do know what Festivus is.
How could you not get to that? Then you didn't watch them all.
Well, we haven't watched them all. I just said that. That's what I said.
Know, but Festivus was before the end of the show.
I know. I'm saying we almost watched them all. We have not quite gotten to the Festivus episode yet, but it's toward the end. It's
Is
in,
it?
Yeah, I think it's season 9 something. So,
okay.
And we're in the beginning of season 9. I think there's 10 seasons if memory serves, but I could be wrong about that. So, but anyway, so obviously, so the airing of grievances is an important part of the festival, of the celebration of Festivus. Apparently, an unadorned pole is also part of it, but I don't really see. I haven't watched the episode. I don't understand the point of that, other than it just being random. And so,
and then there's acts of strength.
Oh,
we're not close enough to wrestle each other. So,
well, you would win for sure since I have a broken wrist. So, yeah.
Excuses. Just excuses.
So that'll be one of my grievances is lack of sympathy from you. All right, so
yeah.
Well, so yeah, no, so I
and the scolding. Don't forget the scolding you get from me.
There's a lot of that's one of my grievances. So I have many grievances, and I know you have many grievances. And
let's hear them.
And Scott, I wanted to show you. Look at the banners. All right, so we're going to show. Obviously, we're going to do my grievances and your grievances.
For those of you not watching, go back to yours. Ted says Ted's highly justified and noble grievances. Mine says Scott's widow boo-hoos.
All right. So in the spirit of Festivus, I promise I won't show that again. Unless I do, thus giving you cause.
Yeah, no, I think I would. You worked hard on that.
All right. So I don't know if we necessarily have to do a back and forth thing, but we obviously bitching and moaning is a huge part of life, I think, for everybody. And but I think, we're cartoonists kind of take it to the next level because our job is bitching and moaning about politics and politicians and parties and all that. And we also, behind the scenes, man, I don't know if there's any profession of people who bitch and moan more than we do. I don't think there can be. I don't think it's possible.
Maybe actors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So, there's many general, we could do this about each other. We could have, I know you have some grievances about me. And I always do.
Not big.
They're not.
There can't be any about me. So
that's true.
Leave you in the lurch.
Indeed.
No, I don't have of my grievances. They are petty and small and inconsequential. So.
As previously stated.
Okay, can I jump in with it?
Well, let's get into
my widow boo-hoos. Yeah, let me jump in with one.
Let's hear.
And it's probably my biggest grievance of the year. And I'm not sure how to put this gently, Ted, for the audience, but fuck you, Democrats, is really the only way I can say it.
Fair.
Now we've got the Wall Street Journal story that came out about that Biden was dilapidated while he was running in 2020, right? That he was clearly incapacitated. He should not have been elected president. 2 years into his terms, there's people now saying, well, I really thought he shouldn't have run. Well, where the fuck were you then, asshole? You know where you were? You were hiding behind MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post and all these other places that continually played cover up for this asshole and got us into this mess in the first place. And now we're having a second term of Donald Trump, and it's your fucking fault. Because if you had been honest with the American people who can understand, oh, Joe's losing it, he's old, we would have gone, okay, well, who do you got next? Instead of shoving Kamala Harris down our throats, arguably one of the worst candidates of the last 100 years. That's my grievance, man. It's like, and how many, I know I ask you this, but I'm just going to say, I cannot begin to tell you how many of my Democratic friends gave me loads and loads and loads of shit for drawing cartoons that had the temerity to question the mental acuity of the sitting president. Now they're all coming out, Ted. They're all coming out and saying, oh, no, I knew it all along. He should have done that. I knew it all along. Fuck you.
You're totally right. Yeah, we both took so much shit for this, and we get no credit. And let me add some grievances to that grievance. We'll pile it on. First of all, I'm going to give grievances to the Wall Street Journal for keeping this important story behind a paywall. It should not be. They should make an exception on this. Also, the other mainstream newspapers and media outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post have not reported at all. I remember in the old days when someone broke news, then other outlets would say, well, there was an exclusive piece in the San Francisco Chronicle, and we're going to report about it. No, we're just not talking about it, la, 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 la. Because, of course, they're all completely complicit, right? I mean,
yes,
this wasn't, there's some guy, it was Chris Cillizza, right? Who he admitted on the air on his in his podcast thingy that he should have asked harder questions about Biden's mental acuity. Chris, this isn't about a failure to ask hard questions, right? This is about like a refusal to see what's staring you right in the face for 4 years and covering up for it and making up bullshit that explains it. I mean, Joe Biden, according to this Wall Street Journal piece, I found this shocking, only had 7 cabinet meetings in 4 fucking years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And by the way, for example, for the last 2 years, his defense secretary, you know why? The defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, he went MIA when he had the prostate cancer thing. You know why he was MIA and nobody knew where he was? Because he never talks to Biden ever. He hasn't had a word to say. Biden and the Secretary of Defense have not exchanged words in 2 fucking years.
Okay, Ted, I'm going to
during
stop
2 wars, by the way.
Well, I'm just saying, in that time, in those 2 wars, when would there, seriously, Ted, this may just be the ego of the defense, and I know your love of the defense department,
right? Great love,
and the fact that they didn't, to talk. I mean, what could there possibly have been to talk about?
Good point, right? Nothing to say. Everything's running smoothly. Hell, they by way of comparison, they talked about how Trump had 25 meetings with his cabinet. That's shockingly few. I would have imagined. I thought the cabinet met every week. I don't understand that.
The president views different cabinets in different ways. I mean, I know it sounds really simplistic and way overarching. Let me enumerate quickly. Is that, for instance, Abe Lincoln met with his cabinet, I think, several times a week.
Okay,
but that was in the middle of a civil war.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and don't forget the cabinet was much smaller. You had the Secretary of War, which I would much rather have that title than Secretary of Defense. I just think that's just way more awesome. But you had the Secretary of State.
It's also more honest.
Well, yeah, there's that. It does have that virtue. But how far did that take anybody in politics? My point is that some cabinets met regularly, others were ignored almost completely.
That's weird.
Well, it depends on the president. I mean, they're supposed to be.
Yeah, like the good ones should be meeting with their president. To me, that's the job. I mean, that seems to me like you should be having at least weekly. I think. Otherwise,
But do you really have to meet with the Secretary of Health and Human Services once a week? Do you really have to meet the housing uh, secretary, housing and urban
Yeah.
development? No, you don't. Every
Why
week?
not? Well, you don't think housing's an important issue? You don't think health
It
is an
is
important
now.
issue?
But
It
well,
always
yeah,
is.
but
It's always important. I mean, what do you mean? None of these.
I'm
If
just saying.
something is important enough to be in the cabinet, well, not to mention if
Oh
there's
no, Ted.
what?
Some of these positions were created for political reasons, like Veterans Affair. How in the name of everything that's holy is that a fucking cabinet level position?
Okay, well, in that case, eliminate it as a cabinet department.
I agree.
But I
Well,
think,
they're talking about education, but
but as long as you do have the cabinet, you have these giant bureaucracies. It seems to me like the head of these bureaucracies should all have the opportunity to have the president's ear in both a closed door and well, I don't think there should be a closed door session, but like in a wide ranging conversation where it's like, hey, Mr. President, down at DOT, we have an issue. Can you help me out? I mean, that doesn't seem like asking a lot. I mean,
no, I would think
that's how
once
you
a
stay
month.
connected.
I think once a month would probably suffice because these guys also supposedly are running these departments. But let's get back to the initial question. It wasn't just cabinet officers who he never saw. He never saw members of his own administration. He
Right.
was purely sequestered
Or
behind a
Karine
wall.
Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, she had to get normally the press secretary does meet with the president quite often.
Yeah.
That didn't happen here.
And she or he sits in on meetings.
Mhm.
They, it depends. I mean, like I said, some secretaries have more access than others. It depends on the administration. But yeah, she had to have it cleared through who? I mean, here's my point, Ted, and this is my grievance. And how can this grievance be
This is a
resolved?
good this is a very no, you're right. This is a major grievance. And
And this needs to be.
it affects the entire country.
Oh,
It's
this is
effective.
huge.
It's a coup d'etat. They
Yeah,
took
we
over the fucking
coup
country.
d'etat. An unelected minority of people, a handful of people, took over the federal government. 1/3 of the federal government was being run by people who had not won a single fucking vote in their entire lives.
Right.
That's what we're looking at. So all of the
And
Democrats,
it's been and it's not just the last few months. It's been like
no,
they're talking about it like, oh, and then we saw the debate, and then it was like, what the fuck? No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Ted and Scott saw it at the inauguration. We saw it the few times he appeared in front of a camera, and he walked like an old man. He had the Mr. Burns, limp wrist walk in front of him, which is a sign of dementia, by the way. We need, and I've never said this. I say this rarely just because I don't like, Congress. We need to have hearings. There need to be charges. At the very least, we need to have a clear and honest and open committee meetings, investigations, so this doesn't happen again. This has happened before. It happened under Woodrow Wilson when he had his second stroke. The first stroke, he was just feeling kind of weird. Second stroke, he was a friggin' vegetable. Do you know they were actually talking about renominating him in 1920, Ted? I just discovered this recently. I'm not kidding. It's like,
oh boy,
he can't get out of bed and he talks like, oh, cheese.
How old was he when he? I mean, when
he was in his
did he
50s.
die? When did he die?
He left office. He actually lived a couple of years after he left office, but his wife was the de facto president. She'd take the papers. She'd forge his signature. I mean, and we did not, and the federal government has done nothing to prevent that from happening a second time. And now it's happened again.
It has happened again, and it was a lot easier to get away with back then because obviously barely radio, no TV.
And the federal government was considerably smaller. Ronald Reagan, arguably particularly the last 2 years of his second term.
It wasn't like that though. I mean, you know me, I'm hard on Reagan, and my father was in the room with Reagan.
I think it was pretty bad,
but it wasn't as fucking bad as this.
No, this with Joe Biden. I mean, if you've seen him, I mentioned this in another podcast when he went to. When he gave the announcement that he was allowing Ukrainians to bomb Russia with our weapons, what can go wrong there, kids? He announced that he was, for some reason, on a trip to the rainforest in the Amazon, and he's in a suit and tie standing in front of the forest. And he
must have been hot.
He reads the statement, which is a very short statement, and then he waddles. He turns around, starts waddling towards the rainforest, which I think they probably should have just let him.
Right.
Just
Born free as
the
the wind blows.
Amazon damn near
He's
killed
return.
Teddy Roosevelt.
True. Well, it did
It
kill
can
him in
sure,
the end. It
yeah,
got him in the end.
it can sure as hell kill Joe Biden.
Well, I think, come on. Like, you could say he started out his career not in the best way as an opponent of court-ordered school desegregation, but he ended it in the mouth of a jaguar.
Who he was fighting or not,
Or not. But I mean, come on. I mean, like, how do you want to die? Like in memory care at a nursing home, or being eaten by a big cat? I mean,
I don't know, man. I just think that that's my number one grievance right now.
That's a huge grievance. I'm glad you brought it up.
It's huge. And the Democratic Party, the ones that are left behind are all like, now, because the story does have legs, because it's substantiated. They actually have people on the record. But all of them, Ted, all of the ones who are in the administration say, well, we thought things were a little weird, but then they got, then we'd lost access, and it's not our fault.
Well, do you think there's going to be any oversight? I mean,
No,
Republicans have complete control over the House and Senate. They could certainly subpoena witnesses and get down to the bottom of this. I mean, they probably are concerned.
And they should.
They're probably concerned that they themselves may find themselves in the same position with the very elderly Donald Trump, who will be even older than Biden as president.
Yeah.
So I suspect,
and he's already showing signs. Did you see him
to do this?
Did you see him at some conservative confab a day or two ago, where he says we need to take the canal back?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Did you hear the audience?
Not legal, right? There's no legal way to do that, right? I mean,
we can take anything back we want. We have a big honking army.
No, I know. I mean, legal.
No, we signed an agreement. Jimmy Carter signed it over, famously signed it, and that's one of the issues that Ronald Reagan ran on in 1980.
Wasn't that? I mean, it was a lease, right? I mean, the lease came to an end, and that was it,
yeah,
right? It's not really controversial.
Yeah. Well, it was very controversial at the time because it really did cede ownership of the canal to the Panamanian government, which it is in their country. So, it doesn't.
Right, but also that was the agreement all along. Also, didn't Trump say the United States lost a lot of lives and treasure building the Panama Canal? I'm like, hashtag. I thought that was the French who did most of the heavy lifting there and got
you're thinking of
eaten
Vietnam.
alive by malaria.
You're thinking of Vietnam. Well, someone tried. And I can't remember.
The French built most of that canal.
No, they did not. The Americans went in and did it, and many of them died from malaria. I mean, it was a very inhospitable. Don't forget, we also created Panama. It didn't exist until we wanted to sign a treaty with someone to build the canal.
Right.
Yeah, the shyster Nicaraguan, I think it was, comes up. Colombian comes up to America and says, "Yeah, I'm the rightful president of Panama." And they go, "Oh, works for us."
Panama was just northern Colombia, right? And then, basically, they split off into an independent republic.
Imagine the Colombian surprise
state of the U.S.
when they woke up and they're half their country is missing. It's like,
not half, not at all, but
a pretty big chunk of it. I mean, come on, Panama, up that peninsula, up the sun. Yeah, come on. It was a lot.
Thing. Yeah.
You know why I mentioned Nicaragua? Because Nicaragua.
You can bring it up on their Festivus.
Okay, let's go. So that's my big grievance right now, but it's also part of yours. What grievance do you have?
So we did a political grievance. I want to do a cartooning grievance. So editorial cartooning has always been like the ugly stepsister of journalism. And my big grievance, this is a recurring one, is the fact that pretty much we have been singled out for being destroyed and eliminated in the new media, right? I mean, everything else crossed over from old dead trees to digital media, right? The sports writers made it over. The editorial writers who nobody cares about made it over.
Yeah.
The columnists made it over. The photographers pretty much made it over, although I know they've been decimated. And obviously all the reporters made it over, and all the editors and the middle managers, everybody made it over. But if you're, the editor at CNN.com, you don't want to hire a cartoonist. If you're the editor at foxnews.com, you don't want to hire a cartoonist. If you're the editor at the Dayton Daily News website, you don't hire a cartoonist. So and so
Right.
on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really, it's, and not only that, now they've taken away the Pulitzer Prize category for cartooning. Normally, this would be the time of the year when all editorial cartoonists would be gathering all their work and applying for the Pulitzer. People don't realize you apply for it. You're not nominated for it. People who say, oh, I was nominated for a Pulitzer.
Yeah.
That just means you paid $75 to be
Yes.
nominated.
We used to have guys like these kind of peripheral guys, and cartooning for years would pitch themselves as saying, I've been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize 5 times. I go, well, that's
that ain't nothing.
that.
I can beat that. So like the thing is now, so they folded it into this category that is just sort of like an umbrella.
What's this category called now?
I think it's called like graphic commentary or illustrative commentary or something like that. But it includes literally everything where a pen touches a piece of paper and makes a picture. So graphic novels, gag cartoons, comic strips, graphic illustrations, yes, editorial cartoons, and a lot of other stuff. And so basically, we used to be, 50 guys, mostly guys, and like 3 ladies, basically, competing for this one thing. Now it's thousands of us, and they don't really like us, so we don't really have much of a chance, even with our reduced numbers. So every now and then we get a finalist job thing, but we don't really get to be, considered for this prize. There's no point applying for it. It's a total fucking waste of time for everybody. I mean, no matter how good you are, talented you are, it does not matter. And so to Columbia University, fuck you. You got rid of the entire thing. It's like, it's maddening. Why? I mean, the readers love editorial cartoons. We can tell when they run, when they're online, they get the clicks. But then also, while I'm grievancing, fuck you to Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and all these other social media giants, with the exception of Elon Musk, I have to be fair, where they deliberately throttle political speech, right? Zuck says, our users have told us they don't like politics, so we're throttling all political commentary. They said that in public. Well, it's like, if your readers don't like political commentary, then they're not going to click on it, and you don't have to have algorithms to say don't look at it, right? It's kind of like, by definition, it's a lie, because obviously it was getting a lot of traffic, and then they started throttling, and then it's gone. When Musk took over, X became X, I saw my numbers like skyrocket because political speech had been throttled on there before, and like
the algorithms for Facebook for anything that you've done for any kind of cartooning work, it's terrible because they're actively going after it. Editors actively have been enemies of editorial cartooning for decades. They've always hated us, and they liked the attention we got, but they hated us. They hated the work. They saw it as juvenile and beneath them.
Mm-hmm.
And so to those editors, I say, fuck off, fuck you, because and they're still there. There's still plenty of them in place where they're like, oh, nobody reads those. Could you possibly be basing it on other than your own stupid opinion, which is not germane here, or important, or quantifiable? What's quantifiable is that people look at editorial cartooning, they like it. I'm part of 3 other cartoonists who do original work for Michael Smirkonich, who has a show on CNN. He also has a daily radio show on Sirius XM, and he put together a book of the cartoons we did for him. And the book sold out, or at least broke even within the first hour. And it sold so many that he was able to give $200,000 to a charity in the Philadelphia area where he lives. It's clearly there's a hunger for it if it's promoted and they know it's there. But editors, words. It's all about words. And so I look at editorial pages, what's left of them, and they're all great. They're all just these expanses of text. It's ridiculous.
I know, it's true. You said the other day they look like a newspaper from like 1820, and they do.
Yeah, yeah, it's just text that nobody will read.
Yeah. So and yet it's not working. Shocking.
I
And
know.
yeah. So yeah. So and then of course, like, then there's like personal grievances, right? Like for
Okay.
example, well, within the profession. So well, actually I do have a grievance against Clovis, who I had provided with a clean litter box, but he decided to poo outside of the litter box next to it, just to send his own Festivus comment that he has grievances that he's not willing to express in proper meowing form. So
In a healthy
Clovis,
way.
Clovis, fuck you. And then also, I have to admit, I'm a little, not a little, as you know, I've always complained about the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists. Never, they give an award every year at their annual convention called the Ink Bottle Award. It's not a big deal. It's like just for the 35 people who show up at the convention, and it's a cute little, like, enamel pin that would look, that goes on your lapel, or in my
Mhm.
case would go with my political buttons. And and anyway, I kind of covet that pin and I feel like I deserve it because it goes to service to the AAEC, the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists. Now, I'm not like on the board these days, but I feel like I saved the profession at a key time, or I saved the association, not the profession. Profession's
Yeah,
fucked.
I was going to
But
say you,
no,
you did a lousy job.
no, I did a job. Yeah, for sure. That would be a grievance against me if I claim that. I totally retract that. But I 150% retract that. But in terms of but back in 2008, when there was the giant economic meltdown, which everybody who was alive then remembers, all the journalism organizations, the photographers, the editorial page writers, the generic American National Association of Journalists, they all canceled their conventions. I was the president that year. The host was David Horsey of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. And man, we were dealt a bad hand. Not only was the economy melting down, cartoonists were being fired right and left, but on top of that, David's newspaper went under a few months before the convention. They were supposed to pay for the convention. It was the Post-Intelligencer. So bye-bye, down the toilet, right? So everybody's like, well, you're fucked, Ted, just cancel the convention. That's what everybody's doing. And I was like, I felt that the only way that the association would survive would be to hold a convention, because it's the only thing we do. We put on a convention, and back then we used to issue a quarterly newsletter. That's it, right? And so why would people pay their dues if we didn't have a convention? So I was like determined to do this. David also did amazing work. I got on the phone and I called every single major corporation in the state of Washington, like companies like Starbucks and Target and Boeing and so on. And there were people who were like, "Oh, we can give you $500." I'm like, done. So I had like 54 sponsors for the convention. And it was really funny at the banquet when I was reading the long list, including a record store in Seattle that had sponsored the convention. And like, the thing is, though, we pulled off the convention in an amazing hotel. That was David's amazing work, the Washington Athletic Club, amazing place to stay. And we had open bars. It was like one of the better conventions, really. And, I thought, Ink Bottle Award should be mine after this. I pulled out all the stops in a very difficult time, but no Ink Bottle Award for Ted. And since it's 2024, and that happened in 2008, I don't think that's ever going to happen, and that's fine. No, it's not fine. That's why we're Festivusing this shit. So I'm really glad. I've never said this in a public forum before. Any cartoonist who watches this is going to be like, what a whiny little bitch Ted Rall is, even more than I thought. To you, fuck you. And you're right. I am a whiny little bitch. But I'm owning it, and I'm putting it right out here for everybody to hear.
No, I'm joining right in. I mean, because I served as president right after 9/11, when everyone, again, another hit against the newspaper industry in terms of don't forget, we went right into a recession afterwards. So we I decided when I was elected that I was going to have the thing in Washington, D.C. This was before 9/11, but we didn't have a host paper. I mean, we talked to, and the Washington Post did step up and help quite a bit. But the cartoonist there at the time, Tom Tolles, was disinterested in helping. He showed up,
as he would,
as
because
he did, but
yeah.
past that, he didn't really pitch in as he did. My host was Ann Telnis, and she did yeoman's work on doing boots on the ground work then. And not just that, but I'd served on the board. I had actually edited the newsletter, the magazine,
Oh, I didn't know that.
several times. Yeah, and so I mean, I've served in every capacity there.
Mm-hmm.
And my convention was the first one to come out in the black, and I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 years. And I was
Oh,
very
I should
proud of
add that I did recover. The
that.
previous president had like done a very, very like he
Any
had done,
job.
he had done a shitty job, and he had spent us way into the red, and I got us into the black. Clovis, what are you doing? Oh my God!
Ted is wrestling his cat, who does not want to be hugged. No,
Yeah, that's
cat
his
does not
grievance.
want to be hugged.
No, he
No,
just
so
wanted to
I'm
be on
with
the
you. I mean,
radiator.
it's a little lapel pin. They've given it to a lot. They've given it to a lot of people
A lot of
who,
wankers, I have to say. I mean,
well, people who didn't
some
contribute.
people who
I think
deserved it, but people didn't do shit who never really did anything for the association.
no, no. I mean, it's just,
Just
but
like sort
they
of like
gave it.
stuff like, oh, because I like you and whatever.
Yeah,
It's been like that.
exactly. So, okay, well, that grievance is out. I'm trying to think of anything else right now. I mean, other than the Republican Party employee.
We could also talk about the Pulitzers. I mean, let's talk about prizes. Scott Stantis, I mean, you have had a long and important career in
Thank you.
20th and 21st century editorial cartooning. You're one of the handful of prominent conservative political cartoonists in the United States, and you have just been studiously snubbed and overlooked by award after award after award.
Yeah,
Including some for which you absolutely should have been a shoo-in, where it would have been just like it's a joke that you weren't at
yeah,
least a finalist. And then, like, I mean, I think, when I think about, like, my analogy of that is like the year that I filed my cartoons from Afghanistan by satellite, from the front, not like at the hotel, from the front, with shots fired in anger all around, unlike Hillary Clinton on the tarmac in Sarajevo. And like, I thought, well, I'm a shoo-in for the Overseas Press Club Award because, I was in Afghanistan.
which is over an ocean from us.
Right, it's overseas. It's true, and anyway, and a lot of land too. Anyway, but I mean, and it's like they didn't even consider me as a finalist. It's like, what? It's like but that's totally there. There was that
insane.
1 year that you did the cartoon about domestic abuse, about child abuse by parents, and you had that series, and it was like a lot of people thought, Scott's going to be, he's gonna be a cakewalk for that. Like, no, not at all. It's just, I mean,
no, not even a finalist. Not even a fucking finalist. Yeah.
You've never been a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize ever, ever. No. Never been a finalist or a winner of the Herblock Award ever.
No, never will be.
Never will be. That's like me. I never will be either. And it's just sort of like, but I mean, I've gotten more awards than you, and you've been at the Chicago Tribune. Like, what the fuck? I mean, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like basically I'll tell you, here's a big fucking thing that pisses me off. When I hear, like, we always like, oh, who do you think's going to win the Pulitzer this year, right? I guess we don't do that anymore because the Pulitzer is kind of abolished.
Yeah.
But we'll be like, God, can you believe they gave it to some fucking New Yorker cartoonist or whatever? But like in the past, we would, it'd be like, wait, they gave it to whom? I mean, this is a tiny group of people. There's been years where I literally didn't know who the person was. And like, you can fit all the editorial cartoonists in North America in an elementary school classroom. It's like, if I haven't heard of you you're a nobody. Okay, granted. And so you'd ask people who were on the committee, because often there's a cartoonist on the committee, and so you're like, how
Oh,
did
well,
this happen? And then you hear these ridiculous, insane stories about how not seriously they take their job as judges for this award. I mean, they take it about as seriously as Joe Biden has taken his presidency for the last 4 years. I mean, they don't show up. They don't do it. Literally, it's like you hear stories like, well, we weren't really done, but we decided, the bar was opening at 4 p.m. So we kicked off and just went with what we had. Or like, we got tired of arguing, so we just went with the person that we disagreed about the least. Or, you'll hear, literally this actually came up. One of the people on the committee saw a cartoon in the paper that day that they really liked. They folded it up and kept it in their pocket and brought it to the committee and just said, I like this cartoon. Can we just give the Pulitzer to them? And we just said, yeah, sure. Or it's like, I went drinking with the head of the committee, and he said he'd look out for me, and the following year I got the prize. Like,
well, that's definitely happened.
That definitely happened. And yeah, and I mean, and then there's been my personal favorite malfeasance of the Pulitzer Prize was the year that's like, so all the long-winded, what we used to call the alternative cartoonists, the cartoonists who appeared in the alt weeklies like the Village Voice, people like Tom Tomorrow, Jen Sorensen, Reuben Bowling, Ward Sutton, me. It's like we had one person on the committee who didn't understand them. So we pushed all those to the side because they were too wordy for her. And then we forgot about them and we never reread them. That's my personal favorite. I mean, it's like, so you guys are complete fucking idiots and assholes.
Oh yeah. No. The award, I mean, that's the thing, is that this award has this prestige attached to it. It does not deserve. One of the best examples was they sent 3 up. Here's how it works. For those of you, this is all inside baseball, but it's pretty simple. They have a jury. There's 5 judges who take a category: photography, feature writing, editorial cartooning. And they winnow it down to 3 finalists, and then they send it up to Valhalla, to the great board, and they say, here
which has lots of famous
3
people that you've probably heard of if you know about journalism. People like
Yes.
Thomas Friedman, the columnist at the New York Times. People like that.
Yeah. So they send it up, and one year they sent it up, and they said, we don't like any of these.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, that's what happened to me.
Do you have a 4th choice? And they contacted the chairman, who you could tell was paying great attention. Says, oh God, they couldn't remember that, and they had no list. They weren't even writing the shit down. And they said, it's someone named Steve. Well, there's a lot of cartoonists named Steve because there's a lot of white men who are cartoonists.
Right, all from the same generation. Yeah.
Hence, a lot of Steves. They went through one, Steve Kelly, who then later claimed he was a finalist. It wasn't. They just mentioned his name because he was a Steve.
He was and remains a Steve.
And then they said, was it Steve Breen? And they go, yeah, that's it. So they sent his portfolio up, and that's how that happened. That's the story.
And he won it twice.
Can't explain.
And in 1996, the only time I was ever a finalist for the Pulitzer, not just a nominee, an actual one of the 3. I get this call from a friend who, who I'm talking about, who always had the inside track to the committee. And he goes, congratulations, you've won the Pulitzer Prize. And I go, what? And he goes, yeah, it's like the other 2 guys, it was Tom Tolles, I believe, and Jim Borgman have previously won. And at the time, there was a sort of informal practice of not giving second Pulitzers. They were trying to eliminate that and try to spread the wealth. So since I was the only one of the 3 finalists who had not received it before, this friend of ours thought, oh, well, you obviously by Ted, you get it. Well, anyway, they announced it, and it went to Jim Morin of the Miami Herald instead. And it was the same thing where they pulled it out of thin air. And they're like, yeah. What happened is Seymour Topping, who was a storied New York Times reporter during the Vietnam War, but by the time 1996 rolled around, he was the head of the journalism school at Columbia and the head of the committee, and he was basically addled and senile and stupid as shit. He when he saw when my thing crossed his desk, he's like, I don't like the way that guy draws. He doesn't draw like an editorial cartoonist. This was when all editorial cartoons basically had a lot of cross-hatching and donkeys and elephants and labels, and I didn't do those things. And so he's like, fuck that guy's drawing. Like, get me someone who draws normal. Ironically, Jim Moran kind of doesn't really draw that normal either. But
No,
he's just,
but
they're
he does a
fucking
lot of
idiots.
cross-hatching.
They're fucking idiots. Yeah, I mean, this is not to say that Jim Moran's, didn't deserve a Pulitzer Prize. It's just that the process is very fucked up. And then a few years ago, they decided not to award it at all. They were like, They sent up 3 finalists, all of whom, by the way, were ethnic minorities, right? So this is a bad look. There's like a Native American,
it was Lalo Alcaraz,
a Jew, and a Latino. It's like walk into a bar and don't get a Pulitzer.
Who is the...
Was it a woman? And there was a Jewish person. I know that.
Yeah, that's not surprisingly the New Yorker guy.
Right.
But Lalo, oh my gosh, I can't remember the third person.
Yeah, Lalo Alcaraz, wasn't it like the Native American guy?
Oh, right, Johnny Two Balls or whatever his name is. Yeah.
Bulls.
Johnny Two Bulls. Yeah.
Bulls and balls are different. Well, sometimes they're the same.
Bulls have balls. Balls don't always have bulls.
That's true. Are you still a bull if you're ballless? I don't know. You're still a bull. You're just not like a full bull. But anyway, so anyway, the point is they decided, like, nobody's really that good. Yeah, fuck Lalo Alcaraz, who's again had a storied career as like a groundbreaking Latino cartoonist and writer and a creator in Hollywood. Fuck him. What did he ever fucking do? He doesn't deserve anything. Fuck the only Native American to ever get in front of that committee. Fuck him. Since when have Native Americans ever been wronged? It's like,
maybe they figured he was used to it.
Right, good point. So it's just like, this is, Jesus Christ, I hate these prizes so much. I just hope they all go away. But it's like, on the other hand, I know I complained about them going away. I can't, I'm mad about this is definitely like the old joke, like about the bad restaurant, such terrible food in such small portions. It's really like that.
Yeah, I came, when I started in the business, there was the Pulitzer was a big deal. It could change your career, or certainly change the arc of it. But I never cared much about awards. They're nice, but like Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. Awards are stupid. If I ever win one going in the future, which I doubt seriously, that's going to be how I'm going to begin my speech. Awards are stupid. To say that I'm doing better work than so and so, or to say that this person was doing the best work in the nation at that year is horseshit. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
That's not even ever close to being true.
So every paper I worked on when I was on staff forced you really. I mean, I not sound petty, or weird that I'm complaining about, but they forced you to enter, even though I'd say, why? So we had a great year. You could win. I go, okay, that's unlikely.
That's not relevant.
And 2, I just thought that this is dumb.
By the way, we should also talk about how the judges, which I'm just going to mention that the judges are often completely unqualified to judge cartoons. I mean, we've had judges who literally have never seen a political cartoon before, ever.
Yeah. No, the judges the year that I was snubbed for what I thought was a pretty significant year and a powerful year. Those guys, one of the judges was a freelance tech writer. None of the other two were either opinion writers, editorial page editors, or cartoonists.
Yeah, they didn't know shit about the profession.
No. And so I'm convinced they didn't look at the portfolios, or if they did.
Oh, well, we have a colleague. Know that. Like, we have a colleague, right, who he is a cartoonist like us. He's been a finalist a number of times for the Pulitzer. and he submitted a digital version of a
Because
cartoon,
he
right?
did
Like a
animations.
video. He did an animated version of his cartoon. This is not just Mark Fiore has one for animated cartoons. This is not Mark Fiore that we're talking about, but a number of other cartoonists have done animated versions. I did them in 2009.
Yeah, Walt Handelsman won for his animations.
Right. So anyway, this person, so the way you submit that is you send a URL. You create a special URL from your own domain, and so you can tell if someone's looked at it because you get the report back from your server, like how many people have clicked through, where did they come from, right? Well, they should be all coming from Columbia.edu, right? Because that's where the Pulitzer Prize is administered. Anyway, so the number of clicks to look at his entry after he paid his $75 application fee was 0. I still to this day maintain that he ought to have
Yes.
sued
Yeah.
Columbia University in small claims court here in New York City and made his point that the award is a fraud, because the fraud, it is a lie. They say, send in your shit, we'll look at it, and you'll get the prize or you won't. But they don't look at it.
No, they didn't look at it, which tells me that they didn't look at mine.
I think they often don't look at them, and it's like, that's bullshit.
And I've had editors tell me who served on different juries for the Pulitzer that these guys, they hope they get editorial cartooning, quote, because that's the fastest and easiest to look at.
Yeah, and that should not be true. And by the way, although I guess it could be in some cases. I mean, I do feel sorry for people who have to like judge biographies and stuff like that.
Oh God, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would be, but it would take some time. You couldn't just do that before kicking off for open bar at 4.
No.
And and while we're festiving, I'm also going to complain about the fact that I have never been on staff at a newspaper. I'm 61 years old, and I never will be. And that's all I ever wanted ever since I was a kid, and saw Mike Peters at the Dayton Daily News in his ink-stained office, stuffing envelopes to a syndicate. I was like, I want to work in a place where there's a teletype machine and drunken sports writers and smoking in the office. And that will never happen. I know.
I wouldn't be. I'm not lying. It was a pretty amazing period of time. But if it makes you feel any better, I actually looked at the Dayton Daily News this morning online, their e-edition, and there was no cartoons. It was headshots for the columnists.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Three stack columns on the editorial page. That was it.
And I just think, I'm not saying I'm the best editorial cartoonist. I'm just saying that, like, compared to some of the people who did have jobs, I think I deserved a job at some point.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Well, I had 6 of them, so they're not what they're cracked out to be.
Well, I know, because like they always censored you and stuff. But
no, you had to deal with editors. I mean, I had a couple of positions. One, I quit the Grand Rapids Press, as long as we were being there. The editor there was a total douchebag, and I lasted a year. Like I said, I didn't have to. I had another stream of income with the comic strip, so I said, "Screw you. Why would I stay?"
By the way, I'm not going to get into the whole LA Times thing, but because I've done that before here. But Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong, one of the people who fucked me over at the LA Times, he basically got nothing but positive coverage until this past fall, when he told his paper not to endorse Kamala Harris. Now suddenly he's a bad person, even though he was already a bad person for making money by killing breast cancer patients.
But how many people die of breast cancer in this country? Oh wait.
Also, while we're at it, I'm gonna. This is not a personal grievance. I'm just gonna say I'm very pissed off at the way that the coverage of Luigi Mangione has been handled by the corporate media, where they keep trying to shame the American people into thinking that they're wrong for being angry at healthcare insurance companies.
Ted, you've touched another nerve, and we really do have to call, because this is just a very long.
We could go on for days.
But you could not be more right. The press I'm reading now, clearly the CEOs are ratcheting up their communications departments and coming out with, we're providing valuable services for obviously needed services, and that this was a horrific act by a lunatic. Now, he may have been a lunatic. I'm not, come on, I'm not going to.
We don't know. Doesn't look so
Well,
far. There's no evidence to support that. He may be,
I think
but we don't know.
Ted, anytime you walk up and shoot a stranger, I'm sorry, that crosses a line.
So, like, if you're a member of the military or a police officer,
those are two very different situations, and you know it. This was in cold blood, walking up to a stranger and ending his life.
In the military, you walk up to someone in cold blood and end their life.
Yeah, but they're the enemy. They're the delineated enemy of
they're not my enemy. Of course. Yeah, there's just some
okay,
yeah.
Ted, you're trying to make this case, and this is where you and I are going to disagree. I couldn't disagree with you.
That's all right. We can disagree.
That's my grievance, is that you just like killing people.
No, I don't like. Look, I'm just saying this is no different than killing like a member of the SS. So, did the guy who killed the member of the SS, is he a lunatic? Who cares? He killed a member of the SS. I mean, it's like this, and there are a lot of members of the SS who never killed nearly as many people as the CEO of United Healthcare. So, I mean,
you and I
killed thousands of people.
I just don't think if someone doesn't like what I do, doesn't like what you do, they don't have a right to walk up to me and shoot me. I just don't. I think that sets a bad precedent.
You and I don't kill anyone. We don't deny life essentially.
We do with our rapier wit
to anyone. Yeah, which nobody gets to see because it's not given any awards or hired by a newspaper.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying. I disagree with you. I still have this naive.
But
I did a cartoon
But let's think about the coverage, though. I mean, these newspapers. Nobody is engaging with the fundamental. Here's the story, right? I mean, there's the story, of course, obviously, of the case. Cover the case for sure. But there's also the story of the reaction, the public reaction, and you can just say like, "Wow, the American people are evil and dark." You can make that argument. But you're not doing that. But that's what the New York Times, the Washington Post, all these outlets are doing. And it's like, well, you should engage with the fact
who's
that
telling them
millions
to do
of people. Yes, I know who's telling them to do. People like Dr. Pat.
Yes, they're owned by hedge funds, many of them, or they're owned by self-interested billionaires who also don't want to be shot.
Right.
And so they're putting the pressure on the newsrooms to dampen down coverage of the response, which you're right, they should be covering because I think it's fascinating. And they're up clicking the coverage of Luigi Mangione as being a lunatic and painting him as not a revolutionary, which I think he may be.
They're not questioning the way this is being handled. For example, charging Luigi with terrorism when there's no terrorism here.
No, I agree.
Larding it up with
the death
federal
penalty
and state charges both at the same time. When does anyone ever do that? There's some major constitutional questions here. And Mayor Eric Adams of New York City participated in the perp walk.
What do you mean? What did he do?
He was there. He was hanging with the cops as they perp. He helped perp walk them. I mean, talk about prejudicing the jury. I mean, although I think the jury's already prejudiced if they in his favor if they have health insurance.
Well, we have a podcast where Ted Rall goes on and on saying that he would love to be called for that jury. He'd sit there and say, "I've never heard of that man before in my life.
Ever.
I love my health insurance."
Health insurance is my favorite industry. Such good people providing valuable services who should never just be shot to death like a dog on the street.
And then when it comes down to the jury deliberations, the real Ted Rall emerges.
Exactly. It'd be like, fuck you. He's not guilty. Yeah, but fuck you.
Okay, one last fuck you to the press, and I'll tell you why. Not because I'm some crazy conservative, but not to your point. They're not covering the reaction to this in a serious way. The Columbia Journalism Review story, which I've had many of our friends refuse to fucking read. It was a long piece, but it talked about how the New York Times continued to cover Russiagate even after they knew empirically that it was a false story.
Right. Right. Oh, and while we're doing grievances about Russiagate, we'll talk about the Biden administration using targeted sanctions to shut down my erstwhile one of my employers, Sputnik Radio, which and basically there's absolutely no evidence or even allegation that Sputnik ever did anything wrong, violated any rules, regulations, didn't pay
No,
their
in fact,
taxes,
if I heard correctly, the fellow who ran it was like a stickler to do it inside the law, follow the rules, made sure they did it every single day. So no, there was no reason to shut down Sputnik. There was none.
Nobody cares in the mainstream media at all.
No.
Nobody.
Well, because it can't happen to you.
Right. We all know how that works. Some guy named Martin Niemöller, I don't know, he might have said something about that. I don't remember. So yeah, no, I knew this would be like, we talked about maybe getting a guest for this, but I was like, I think Scott and I can handle this bitch fest. I'm sure we can. Yeah, we didn't even get into like friends and family. We're just like,
well, no,
we're just like, keep it professional here. And as it is, I think we've just scratched the surface. We could do this tomorrow, but we're not going to.
We're not. It's Christmas Eve. But Ted, indeed. It's Christmas Eve. That's every Christmas movie ever made. Yes,
that's true. All right. So, Scott, I guess that's it. Happy Festivus to you.
Happy Festivus to you.
Actually, I feel this, the psychologists say that the airing your grievances helps you. And I do feel a little lighter in my loafers.
Okay. Well, that makes my loafers lighter too, Ted.
And I want your loafers to be lighter, Scott.
Yes. All right. It's a tough world. We should all have lighter loafers.
I would never wear loafers, actually, because I used to. Yeah, you're a conservative. Did you have what? By the way, so you might know about this. Remember, there was a thing where some people would put a coin in there.
Yeah, penny loafers.
Yeah, why?
Because it's a penny loafer, so you put a penny loafer in your penny loafer.
What for, though? It's like, what's the purpose?
Why? I have no idea. Maybe back in the day, so you could buy a newspaper. I don't know.
Because you didn't have pockets.
Well, the way they have that weird little design on that strap that goes over the foot, and that's a perfect place to put in a penny. But that seemed to be a thing. I have no idea. I did not own penny loafers, but I did have shoes with tassels for a short period of time.
Ooh, the gayest of all shoes.
That would be the most Republican.
I mean, if you go into Pete Buttigieg's closet, there's like nothing but shoes with tassels.
Wow. Okay.
I think
nothing wrong with that.
All right, Scott.
All right,
always
man.
A pleasure. We're gonna play the outro, but we got to get some music for that. I know I always say that, and here we go. You provide the music here. Let's have some Christmas music if you're game.
Here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. Pulling on the reins. Ted rolls a book out and another book's coming soon. Stantis is on Go Comics, so go and take a look. Hey. All right.
Let's close this down here.